everybody. Welcome to Into the
Hello.
Wormhole with Larissa and Lowen. Lowen is on her way. We're so excited to be a part of the IDIC Podcast Festival. Thank you so much to Women at Warp for having us. We are talking today about music therapy in the Star Trek universe. And we have a special guest with us, my sister, board certified music therapist Amanda Maestro-Scherer. Hi.
Hi. I'm so excited to be here. Talking about music therapy and Star Trek are my two favorite things in the world. So,
well, that means that you are very qualified for this topic. Do you want to just quickly tell our viewers, listeners, a little bit about what music therapy is while we're waiting for Lowen to arrive? Because
Yes.
I don't think a lot of people generally have sort of a concept of what music therapy is, or like really what expressive therapies are.
Yeah, definitely. So, music therapy is actually an allied healthcare profession in which we use music to address the needs of our clients. And that can look like very, very different things. And we're using music to do that. So, for someone, for example, maybe at end of life who's in a lot of pain, we might use music to help with pain management. We can use music to help regain function after a brain injury, or use music in the therapeutic relationship to address trauma and anxiety and depression. So there are a lot of different applications for music. And the most important thing I think to remember about music therapy as a profession is that music therapists are specially trained to understand how our brains and bodies and emotions respond to music, and use that to create very individualized treatments for the clients that we work with.
Yeah. That is so cool. So Amanda went to Berklee College of Music, and that's where she got her degree in music therapy. And then went to St. Mary of the Woods College and got her master's there. And also then, so that's one qualification. Other qualification is she's my sister, and we have been watching Star Trek together since we were children.
Forever, yes.
Forever. So there are a lot of moments in Star Trek that are, honestly, there's a lot of music in Star Trek that's like really used in the show. But there are a lot of moments in Star Trek in which a character has a therapeutic or like a therapeutic relationship or experience with music.
Yes.
And there are tons of those. We're going to talk about our favorites, kind of. We're going to talk about the ones that we think are the most important, maybe, or the most relevant to this topic of music therapy and Star Trek. And then we're going to talk about how expressive therapies and music therapy in particular could be more a part of like a future utopia in which medicine and care is a more holistic approach, as opposed to what it is now, where everything is segmented and we have to pay a lot of money for stuff. Yay, Lowen's here.
Hi. Sorry, I have no pants. Like it's not even like I don't like pajama pants. I just have no pants.
Luckily, nobody can see that. But I'm really glad to know. I'm excited that I know that. Hi, everybody. This is Into the Wormhole with Larissa and Lowen. I'm Larissa, your captain, and this is Lowen, my number one.
I usually have pants. I can't let that go, but
she usually at least has pants. So yeah, Lowen, we just, to catch you up, we just talked, Amanda just like briefly gave everyone a rundown of music therapy and what that is. And now we're kind of just talking about what characters we're going to discuss. And I was just going over that, like, we're not going to talk about every single time a character has a therapeutic relationship or experience with music, because there are actually quite a few.
That makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot.
but we're going to talk about the one specifically that Amanda was like, this is a thing. This is a real thing. And maybe then just like mention a few others.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to start with the big one.
We could start with the big one.
The big one is the one that like I think probably most people would think of if they just heard about what music therapy is, and then they're thinking about Star Trek. I feel like most people would be like, oh, so like kind of like the inner light, kind of like Lessons and the inner light, and the relationship that Picard has with the music and the flute that he learned on in that experience where he was kind of attacked and gaslit.
Some serious trauma.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I don't know if you'd be watching this podcast convention if you haven't seen The Inner Light. It is a Peabody Award-winning episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, in which Picard gets there's like a, what is it? It's just like a probe in space, and it beams into his brain, and he lives out an entire lifetime on this defunct planet in the span of 25 minutes. And in that time, he learns to play the flute. Like in the flute is like a big part of his life there. And then after 25 minutes, he wakes up and he's back on the Enterprise. And the last scene of that episode is him in his quarters alone playing this melody written by Jay Chataway, this gorgeous melody, by himself. And then in the episode Lessons, he is able to connect with this very cute science officer, Dr. Nella Darren, and they end up connecting intimately and playing music together. And he shares his experience in the inner light, and talks about why his music is so important to him. So I mean, I would love to like hear your thoughts about that as a music therapist, what your thoughts are about the inner light and Lessons.
I just think the way that they established, first off, right, Picard's relationship with music and how important that is to him, because he's always had, you know, he will listen to classical music in his quarters and has always, you know, throughout the show, like really enjoyed it, but it takes it to a more personal level for him. And what it shows in Lessons is that the music really is tied to his trauma, right? And tied to that experience, and tied to the grief and loss that he experienced, losing a whole lifetime, right? Losing his grandchildren and his children and his wife, and all, like having a whole life, right? That's some serious grief and loss that he probably just tried to process through by himself, right? And the music was really tied to that. And when he connected with Nella Darren, he was finally able to show that and open it up. And we can only process through things if we're able to look at them, right? And let them breathe. And so playing and sharing that particular song with her allowed him to access that grief and share it with somebody. And I think even just in the way that they interacted with one another through, you know, she's teaching him how to like improvise around a melody and those kinds of things. I think for Picard, who is such a in control all of the time, right? Even in his holodeck adventures, like he's still Dixon Hill. He's still like in charge of things, right?
That is
and
so
true.
For
for him to be in a space, because playing music with someone is so vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be so vulnerable to open yourself up to that. And I think that really deepened his connection with her and allowed him to open up to her through that melody and through his experience with, you know, processing through his grief and loss.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, I just said, Lauren, I just said to you the other day when we were like talking sort of through what we were going to talk about in this episode, that watching him share that melody with her for the first time, and then like listening to her, because like the first time we hear this melody, it's just flute by itself, right? In the inner light. But like when we hear it in lessons, she's supporting him on the piano.
Yes.
So she's like, it's the first time we hear it with harmony, and the first time we hear it like as a fully formed piece of music.
Absolutely.
And it really like it hits me emotionally because like I'm also in a relationship, a long-term romantic relationship with another musician. So I understand how intense the connection and the intimacy is when you're when you're making music with another person. And Picard doesn't have like really, really super close connections with a lot of people on the ship. Like we're assuming that like maybe he talked to Deanna about this, probably, maybe Guinan.
Yeah.
But like he probably didn't. I mean, he definitely didn't play music with them. Oh no, we lost Lauren. Oh no. But this, like we don't ever even really see him process like any sort of grief necessarily. Like it's when we watch him process grief, it's like a big deal, you know? But this like in particular, when he's like, hi, I had this like really very intense traumatic experience and I want to share it with you. That's a big deal for someone like Picard.
Yeah.
So like when you're in hey, Lauren's back, yay, is that better? We don't know what happened. Well,
still not wearing pants, by the way. We'll see. I just want to give everyone a heads up. Like it's a little spotty. If I lose you guys, just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, Lauren. So yeah, I'm interested to hear like, because this is not this is like Picard has a therapeutic relationship with music, obviously, in these 2 episodes, but he's not like working with a therapist, you know? Right. So like this is a situation in which the music is a therapeutic thing for him, but like we also see, like Lauren, you brought up when we were talking earlier, like he says, like I was almost like when she almost dies, like I was gonna put my music away and never play again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The box.
Yeah, I kind of am just coming in, but I'm going to hope I understand what you guys were talking about. I really like the way they brought the music back into lessons, but by bringing Nella Darren in and not only sharing that but it's basically that vulnerability like you guys were talking about, but it's him kind of increasing the bond. It was bonded to his experience in a way, his coping and his memories and trauma. But by sharing that with a new love, he's also making it vulnerable because in a way that music can be affected again. And he's saying like, if I lose someone, then this bond we've created with this music could, it could be tainted later if something negative happens. Yeah. To bring something so personal to a relationship, it means that can be affected if something happens with that relationship, like a loss.
Yeah. And Picard is so guarded like that. I think that's big for him to open himself up to that pain again. Right.
Yeah. Well, and that music is already connected to loss for him. Like that music is already connected to like, I lost my wife and my family and my best friend, like from this whole life that he lived, his grandchildren, his children, like it's already connected to all those things. And then for it to be then connected to someone he fell in love with, who then like, oh no.
Yeah.
And I think, Larissa, I heard you bring this up, so apologies if I'm repeating what's already been said, but also in Inner Light, like he doesn't just lose this family. I mean, he's traumatized twice because when he shows up in this alien civilization, he still knows the Enterprise. He has all his memories intact. So in a way, he goes through the trauma of that experience.
Yes.
Where everyone's like, what are you talking about? You're not a captain of a starship, silly. And so, there's that. And then there's the additional trauma of accepting that truth or what he thinks is the truth and losing it again. And
yeah, that's a really good point. I wonder, for him, when he decided to pick up the flute and learn it, that was in a way like a coping a coping tool for him to kind of work through the trauma of having lost his life on the Enterprise and being totally gaslit there that like, you know, this never happened to you. And so connecting with music then as a coping, and then it's tied to then that whole life.
Oh my God. I just put something together. I feel like this was on purpose. The first piece of music he plays on that flute in the inner light is Frere Jacques.
Yes. And then he plays it with
Nella Darren. That's the piece of music that he's like, here, she's like, here's an easy thing that we can like play together.
Right. They go from Brandenburg to Frere Jacques. She's like, how about something a little easier? Like, wait, but he was just playing Brandenburg. Like,
I mean, that's cute.
That's so
like,
true. Yeah.
I don't know who was if that was Dennis McCarthy or if that was Jay Chataway's choice, but I like it.
Yeah, yeah. I think you brought up a really good point, Larissa, about when the way that she supports him musically, and how, you know, that is the first time that we hear, you know, that piece, which I'm assuming he wrote, right? Like that's kind of in his character, right? In
the universe,
right?
he wrote it. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, you know, by doing that, she is supporting him in opening all of these things up. And I think, you know, was it after they played that piece together that then he talked to her about what happened?
Yes. First they smooched.
Right,
and then he told her about it.
But, you know, that's something that happens like within music therapy sessions, you know, because music therapists are also musicians. So we're not just using recorded music. And to be able to join somebody in their music making, in musicking, as we call it, really says, I hear you. I hear you. I'm here with you. Everything that you are experiencing and expressing is okay.
Yeah.
And I will be here to support you in it.
Yeah.
And that's what she was really telling him through the music.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that, because like what she's doing in that scene is something that I've seen you do.
Yeah.
You know, something I've seen you do, one of my best friends, Kashana Armstrong, is also a music therapist. It's something that I've seen her do as well. Is using like your skills as a musician to support your client or your patient,
right,
in their experience. Like that's what you do when you're writing a song with someone in a music therapy setting, is like you are providing that support musically and emotionally for that person through playing guitar for them, because they don't know how to play the guitar.
Right. And it's and the idea is, you know, it's not about the therapist. We're there to support, but it's also one of the important things too, though, is that reciprocal interaction that only happens through music, right?
Right.
So you can't remove yourself from it either. So while the therapist and while Nella Darren in her role in this experience was really supporting, it's also reciprocal.
Yeah.
And she certainly got a lot out of that.
I mean, she got a bunch of smooches out of it,
you know,
for sure. Oh my gosh. I don't know if like if you feel like we've kind of touched on this one, or if there's anything else about this that you're interested in exploring.
I think we covered it pretty well. I think, you know, just kind of a takeaway with the connection with music therapy is just, you know, that that everyone has some kind of relationship with music, whether it's just like you listen to music for, you know, during a commute to keep you focused on something, or whether it's music that's tied to really important events and people in your life. And those relationships with music can be really difficult for people, and they can be really triggering. And they can also be really really healing as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
So working with a therapist who is trained to know how to access those things is kind of the, sort of the takeaway with like how music therapy as a clinical use can come into play.
Yeah. Hey, she's back.
Welcome.
I'm just keeping everyone on their toes, Still don't have pants. Throwing that in there.
No.
Okay,
You don't
back
need
to
them.
more serious stuff.
We don't need pants. We don't need pants for this. I'm going to pretend I'm not wearing pants for this. So we just sort of, Lauren, wrapped up talking about lessons and the inner light. It's like that's one of like the sort of like lovely, I feel like, music therapy moments. The like nice, it's a very feel good, even though it's like really sad. And also I would have loved to like, I wish that if I forget the actress's name, I know that she passed away in 2014, but like that would have been like one of my wishes for Picard, future Picard seasons would be to like bring back Nella Darren. But I know that's not, now we know that's probably not going to happen. I know. But yeah, I feel like that is nice. That's a nice thing. Now we can move on to maybe some more difficult stuff. So I feel like it might be nice for the next one if we talk about Tuvok.
Yes.
And Neelix, who I'm going to call Tuvok's therapist in this episode, which is the episode Voyager called Riddles. It's a season 6 episode. Lauren, did you watch this one?
I did. Yeah. I saw.
Do you want to give
I remember texting you.
Yeah.
Me?
Do you want to give a little recap?
Sure. We're going to try to keep this short for time's sake. But basically, Tuvok and Neelix, some aliens go on board, zap them with a weapon, neurological damage, and in the process of trying to heal Tuvok, he has suffered neurological damage to the point where he sort of lost his Vulcanness and his memory and identity and so forth. So there's some basically what we would call, brain trauma. It's like the equivalent of being in a car accident and you're different. You wake up different. And so in that episode, Neelix is trying to be a good friend, and Larissa loves her good friend moments in Star Trek, and is trying to help the process by bringing in flowers from his room and playing the Vulcan monks music. And lo and behold, Tuvok actually awakens out of this sort of neurological coma. But again, he's different. And so Neelix is sort of trying to help his recovery and by doing whatever he can. And it means some really interesting things. Tuvok decides he likes to cook, and there are some other interesting things about the episode, but I think we'll get to them in just a second. I kind of want to branch back to you or Amanda on, kind of that part about the idea of the music therapy. And it's when Neelix plays the monk music. It's a great camera shot, by the way, if you see the episode. It kind of like the doctor and Neelix are talking, and it sort of pans left, it pans right, and then when it goes center, you see Tuvok, he's just sitting upright from the medical bed.
I
he's
love
woken
that.
up from the stimulus. But yeah, Amanda, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, you hear a lot about that, about people who are in comas and stuff, like talking to them and, sense and the sensories, and music is a big part of that.
Yes. So we can assume that Tuvok had a brain injury, right? And when people are recovering from brain injuries, there is a point in that bringing in different types of sensory stimuli is really important. So Neelix was doing a really great job. He's reading to him. He was bringing in different things that would, stimulate his sense of smell, and then of course playing the music. And this is something I feel like the way that they wrote this was actually really brilliant, because it's something that I've experienced myself as a music therapist working on ICUs with people who have had brain injuries, that oftentimes the medical staff have a very specific idea of what they think, what type of music should be played. And the doctor had this response like, what is this garbage, basically? You know, like, why are you playing this for him? But all the research shows, and the clinical experience shows as well, that patient-preferred music is going to be the most effective for these kinds of things, right? Not just for this specifically, but just in general, right? Like a song that might be relaxing, like, you know, Vivaldi or whatever for one person might cause a lot
Vivaldi
of
is not
anxiety.
relaxing. Vivaldi does not. No.
Vivaldi relaxes no one.
No.
But you know what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
So like medical personnel will typically be like, okay, play them classical music. But no, that's like if they're into Vulcan, whatever monk music.
Was it opera? I think it was Vulcan opera.
It was Vulcan opera, yeah.
Yeah, they're usually like, it's opera. Use. Every culture has opera, apparently, in Star Trek. Everyone has some sort of opera. Yeah.
I think it's just important. We need to start filling out for the hospitals. Like, do not recite. Like, you know, do you want to be recitated or not? Are you an organ donor? And what music to play if you're in a coma? I would anything with synth, please. There we go.
Absolutely. No, I think that's actually, there are a lot of music therapists who are kind of talking about that. Like, we should have kind of your preferred music as part of, you know, like an end of life document. Like, what music do you want to be listening to when you're dying? What do you want? Right? What music will like help you recover from a brain injury? Right? Like, what music? I've talked to Larissa about this. I'm like, if I'm ever in a have a brain injury, like, you should be playing like Les Mis for me, because I know all of the words to that, and that will help, you know, bring my speech function back.
Patty Griffin.
Put on Patty Griffin right away.
Joni Mitchell. I mean, not to stray too much from this episode, but like, this actually brings up just like the fact that music, we know that music in particular, that art, of course, is very powerful, but that music in particular is very powerful as far as the way that it affects the human brain.
Right.
And I'm interested in what you just said about like putting this, like what you said, Lauren, about like putting this information like in your medical history, because like, think about that episode where Deanna is hearing that song in her head and she's being traumatized by it, right? Yes. She's being tortured, yes, by it. And by Kevin. The
exotic alien name of
the exotic alien name Kevin. But Amanda and I were talking yesterday, like, what if Deanna was in a medical situation later in her life where she was unable to verbalize or communicate telepathically with anyone, and somebody was like, here's a nice song. Let's put on this nice song for Deanna so she can relax. And it's that song that she was tortured with.
Absolutely. And
like, these are things we need to know.
And it's happening in nursing homes and assisted living facilities, you know, with like, and that's why it's really important to have somebody who understands that music can be tied to trauma. We've got generations of people, you know, veterans who are in these nursing facilities now, that music could have really intense ties to traumatic experiences for them. And they just stick headphones on them and walk away, you know, and there's a lot in that. Right.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
I have a question about this episode that was kind of geared to Amanda, if you guys don't mind me steering it that way. Because first of all, this episode, I text Larissa when I was watching it saying, is this Tuvix 2.0? Where
we're back to riddles. Sorry.
We're
those
riddles.
Yes.
Sorry. That's right. We did end up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to go back to Riddles and Voyager, the one where Tuvok is kind of suffering, losing that part of him, his Vulcanness. And bonds very much to Neelix. He feels very safe with Neelix. But in that episode, he is very different. And he basically says, I'm pretty happy, I'm content. He has sort of found himself on the other end, even though he's different. Now, I realize we're talking about a fictional TV sci-fi show. And it has to reset at the end. We're going to get Tuvok back where he was. This was especially
Right.
at this era. And I also realized that if they have any chance of getting back alive, they need Tuvok to become their tactical officer.
Yeah.
So I get it. But it did remind me a little bit how in Tuvix too. Tuvix is like, hey, I'm cool. Like, I'm pretty
I like
cool
me.
with this situation.
Yeah.
But everyone else is like, no, we need you back the way you are. And in this episode too, we get a character saying, I'm pretty happy with the way I am now. And it brought up this, it made me wonder if there was a larger narrative here about when an individual is sort of dealing with their trauma and moving on, even if it means definitely a new season or a big change, but maybe their friends and families aren't accepting of that. And I'm wondering, in your work, Amanda, do you see that where the individual is actually doing pretty well, but maybe the family and friends aren't? And do the episodes like this kind of push that narrative in a harmful way?
Yeah, I think so. But I do think that there is a lot of truth with that. That when people are profoundly changed by either trauma or injury, that of course, personally, there's a lot of coping and transformation that has to happen for the individual, but also for the family to be able to kind of get to a point where they can accept and reacquaint with this new person, and I think music can be used in those situations to help everybody kind of get to a place where they're able to accept is the wrong word, but start to relearn or learn again, like learn for the first time, who this person is and who they are as well, but I do agree that there is, it definitely does kind of push that narrative of like, if you're not back to where you were, then you're not although
fixed,
at the
or
end,
you're not right.
At the end of the episode, there were like little, they did kind of show those little glimmers of Tuvok, sort of having a different sense of humor and, kind of connecting to Neelix in a different way. So I think they kind of, in sort of similar to in Swarm too, at the end with the doctor, right?
Yeah.
There's just sort of like just a little glimmer of it.
Yeah.
Right.
The Sundays. You can also eat the Sundays.
The Sundays, yes.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring up Lauren, that this episode, Riddles, actually has some moments of possible art therapy.
That's
like
right.
they're looking to get this very important information from Tuvok, right? They need the cloaking signature of the aliens that attacked him. And he, after this brain injury, cannot remember it and is also traumatized by the experience. And every time they talk to him about it, he shuts down. And he's only able to get to the place where he can find that information by literally putting it on a cake.
He's
like
icing a cake. Yes, the
Yeah.
frequency. I don't know if this was mentioned before, but yeah, as a you guys are musicians. As an illustrator, I definitely know colleagues and peers who've gone into art therapy. And so that's kind of like a sister therapy to music therapy, obviously. Yeah. And so that to me definitely reminded me of what you probably experienced, Amanda, not just people with brain damage, but you're talking about individuals who can't really, a lot of time what I think of as children, like who don't have maybe the maturity or understanding to verbalize what they want to. Everything's kind of muddled a little bit. And for me, a good part of the creative process, and I'm kind of simplifying things, but a lot of it is internal processing. Like I'm trying to understand something that I'm digging at. And then some of it is more about communication. In fact, like I think Data connecting to the violin is about him. It is internal, but he shares that a lot. Whereas like Picard doesn't share the flute a lot. And with this cake thing, going back to that, where Tuvok actually, he can't, because of the infliction of the alien weapon, he doesn't understand the technology. The image, his memories aren't clear, and he also just has lost memory of the science. So it's hard for him to technically articulate what he's saying because he just doesn't have that information anymore. And so he's able to remember and see it, but he can't, all he knows is like, it's a squiggly line. I have no idea what it is. So he actually ices it on, cake. And in art therapies, it can be very important, again, for people who can't articulate it because of, brain damage, or again, like a child, they express it visually. A child scribbling on something to express anger or frustration is more powerful than the words they can use at that point.
Right.
And I'm sure music is the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like to say I'm angry is not the same, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what does your anger look like? What does it sound like?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to again give Neelix like a little
he was
bit
so
of applause.
Wonderful.
He's like, because he provided Tuvok with all of these creative activities.
Yeah.
And without that, like, first of all, they would probably never have found that cloaking signature, but also it helps, obviously it's therapeutic. It helps Tuvok to like get through this like really traumatic experience that he just had.
Yeah.
And like waking up and like not knowing who he is. Neelix, what?
And I think like you mentioned, Lauren, like it helped all of these creative outlets that Tuvok or that Neelix provided him really helped Tuvok become reacquainted with himself as the new person that he had become.
Like when he's using his Vulcan candles to make that little flower.
Yeah. He's like, oh, I'm making a flower.
That's so cute. I love that, Tuvok. I would love to move on and talk about the EMH. This one episode in particular, and we all know, if you're watching this, we all know that the EMH has a very strong relationship with music and art. And in a lot of ways, like Data, he uses, and like 7 of 9, he uses music and art to connect with humanity, and to connect with his own humanity, right? And in this episode, it's season 3, episode 4 of Voyager, and the episode's called Swarm. He starts his program starts to degrade, and he starts to show signs of what look like dementia and Alzheimer's. And it all starts to happen while he's rehearsing a part of La Boheme on the holodeck, which is, first of all, adorable. And then he forgets the lyrics, and then he starts to forget who he is. And they go through this whole process. They have to restart him, which is really, really, really sad. But at the end of the episode, you hear him humming a part of La Boheme again. And I thought, I brought this up to you yesterday, Amanda. I thought this was really interesting. And I wondered if the writers, and I didn't look this up, I just didn't, if they had been reading Oliver Sacks.
Yeah.
If any of y'all out there know, Oliver Sacks was a very famous neuroscientist. And he was very interested in the way that music affected the brain. And he did research on people who had experienced memory loss, and found that music was like one of the last things to go. That even if they couldn't remember who their family was, or they couldn't remember who they were or where they were, that they could still sing a song that they knew. Or they could still, like, they actually did this it was a guy who was a choral conductor, and they put him in front. He had lost all like short-term and long-term memory. And they put him in front of his choir, and he conducted them perfectly.
Yeah.
And so like, I feel like we see that in this episode. We see the doctor retains this understanding and this memory of this music. And this is like actually in science, like this is real. So I wonder if they had read Musicophilia by Oliver Sacks, which I highly recommend to everybody.
You got homework. There will be a quiz. at the end of this podcast.
We expect you to read the entire book right now. But I would love to hear you talk about using music therapy with people that have dementia and Alzheimer's. Our grandmother had dementia, and I know that you I was there and cried a lot watching you interact with her and play with her.
I think, that actually, those experiences with our grandmother when we were probably maybe in high school, right? When she started to kind of decline.
Yeah.
And those experiences, we would go and visit her every summer, and she would, be a little bit worse every summer and not be able to remember, starting with like us, she didn't remember us. And then slowly she didn't even remember who my dad was. And it was really hard for us as a family. But I would sit down with her and play her favorite hymns and show tunes and stuff. And she would remember all the words. And that was not only did I recognize something is happening in her brain that's allowing her to remember these things when everything else has fallen away, but also we are able to have an emotional connection again, even if she doesn't know me, and that's happening through the music. And I think the way that they did that with the doctor was actually really, it was obviously about, Alzheimer's disease and dementia, right? And the way that I think you mentioned, how when they reset him, how sad of a moment that was, right? And how sad for the people in his life who, were losing him. And I think that really mirrors, people who have Alzheimer's disease and dementia, that their loved ones are kind of left feeling like we lost our person, even though they're still here.
I'm gonna cry.
Right?
I'm really crying.
I always cry talking about grandma.
I know, but it's true. It's oh, hearts. It's true. It's really, it's really intense. And I think that the way that this episode was written is really beautiful in that way, especially watching Kes fight for
very much so
the doctor, watching her be like, no, this is not, there has to be another way.
Mm-hmm.
That feels very relatable, because so many people in the world, lots of people have someone in their life that has dementia and Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's. So I just thought this was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And the truth is, what you were saying, Larissa, our brains light up like a Christmas tree when we're listening to music, when we're engaged in music. And they've found that actually basic rhythm is one of the last things to go, that people, with really advanced stages of Alzheimer's can still tap their foot to a beat. That's still something that is retained. And there's so much about our brains and music that we don't understand. It's still, and so in the future they should have had all the information, right? I would imagine. We'd have a much better understanding of why we respond this way.
That's a really great segue. I don't know if you guys want to. I think it's we could talk about Worf's relationship with music and how that connects him as a what did I say?
Transpecies
adoptee, how that connects him to his Klingon culture. But we could talk about Data and Seven using music to connect to their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really interested in talking about what the future of expressive therapies integrated into medicine looks like, because we know that Star Trek in particular, but science fiction in general has done a lot for pushing technology forward. And pushing you see a lot on Star Trek, somebody's or a doctor's look at this new gadget I have that's going to fix your knee, or here I'm going to give you a hypo spray with some drugs in it and it's going to make you not sad or something, but like there's not a lot of like, we know these things about the brain now. And here are some practices that you can adopt into your life, or here's like a new therapeutic technique that is going to be helpful. And I love that like Star Trek has pushed technology forward, you know, but like I would love to like hear what you think about expressive therapies in the future and how new Star Trek can talk about the brain in new ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I would hope that we are kind of approaching a point that our treatment is moving into more of a holistic manner, a more holistic approach. And so integrating things like art therapy and music therapy and dance and movement therapy, those are, you know, like having more non-pharmacological approaches in medicine. I think I would hope to see that in the future, that you know, maybe the EMH could have been programmed with some music therapy techniques to help Tuvix. I was going to call him Tuvix.
Help Tuvix.
To help Tuvix too, but to help Tuvok, you know, recover from that brain injury. You know, if EMH had been programmed with some music therapy techniques, and maybe legit, you know, legit. Right? When Data was painting to kind of like, you know, explore his inner world through dreams, like that, you know, maybe Counselor Troy would have some art therapy training that she could kind of help him explore that, you know? I think in the future there's a lot of room for it and growth.
Yeah, and Larissa, kind of going back to what you're saying about you know, the person who conducted their choir when they were in that environment. I think a lot of people have looked into what VR is now and can be as far as medical training and you know, other things, but also the ability to put someone in an environment. I remember my uncle had to deal with some you know, Alzheimer's issues, and I remember my aunt talking about there were painters coming to the house, and she was very worried because if you move the coffee maker, my uncle's routine was going to get disrupted, and you know, he goes here to make his coffee, and that's very important that things stay where they are. But the idea that you can put someone in a former home, you know, like the fact that they might be in an assisted living or hospice and suddenly go back to something that represents their bedroom that they're used to having, or or something like that. I think that could be an amazing thing. They have great tools in VR right now where you can kind of like paint in the space and stuff, and that just brings like a whole world of incorporating sound and visuals, I think, for not only art and music therapy, but again, kind of the idea of transplanting people into different environments that might be stimulating or therapeutic in other ways. So let's get that holodeck going. Come on.
Yeah, right. That is really cool. That the intersection of technology and therapies, like not just like, here's the technology where we can like look at our individual cells, or like, here's the technology where we can like, you know, like laser cut someone's brain thing and do it, whatever.
It's about elevating the possibilities of what creativity can be, I think.
Yes.
And how it incorporates into therapies.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. That's one of the coolest things about Star Trek, you know, is the actual effect that the show has on greater culture and on the sciences. And specifically, like, I know that there's a podcast later they're gonna talk about diversity in STEM and I think definitely tomorrow, which is gonna be really cool. I'm excited. I hope I can watch that one. But I'm interested to see more of this holistic, like Amanda says in our Google Doc, holistic, non-pharmacological and individualized approach to care. And not just like hypo spray, you know?
Right.
There's so many hypo sprays all the time.
I think in the future, though, like it would be so hard to be a music therapist because you'd have to have repertoire from every single, you know, known planet and You'd have to have an
Right?
understanding, like physiologically and like of their brain system and body.
This is why EMH is great
Ah!
for this. This is why EMH is like literally just like he's got like the library of all of this information, and he's a musician. Like he's
Yeah.
perfect.
There you go.
Perfectly suited to be a music therapist.
He could play any of those instruments. You could just program him and he can play. What was that one that they had with the little, I don't know, the episode where it was kind of like a Simon Says thing.
Oh yeah.
You
I
know
mean,
what
I
I'm
feel like we're sometime in the future into the wormhole with Larissa and Lowen. We'll talk about all of the weird future alien instruments that are all just kind of theremins.
Yes. They're sort of all the same.
I actually have a question for you, because I was thinking about this when I was watching Lessons. Is Nella Darren playing the piano? I'm guessing no.
No,
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. I
don't
mean,
think
she's
so.
doing a really good job pretending to play the piano.
Well, I noticed they never
they do the
show
close-up
her.
shots.
Yeah, and even then, it looks like kind of like the cat banging on the piano. Like, but there's only one shot of her arms touching the keys, and Larissa and I have had this discussion about which people on Star Trek are actually playing the instruments and which ones are just pretending. I'm curious, on a scale from 1 to 10, how well does Brent Spiner pretend to play the violin?
Oh, it's bad.
5.
He doesn't. No, he doesn't. He doesn't know how to play violin, and it's okay. Violin is really hard. Like it's much easier to pretend to play the piano because you can just shoot someone and not see their hands, and they can just go. You know.
What about Patrick Stewart and the flute? Is he doing? Is he doing an okay job?
He's doing fine.
No.
It's like Harry Kim playing the clarinet. Like all you have to do is breathe in the right place, and people will believe you.
Okay. This is good.
I know it's true. So we've only got 5 minutes left. I'm like so grateful that we got to do this today. I know that Lowen had some technical difficulties. I'm sorry. I want everyone to know that like I've like been looking at your comments, and it like I'm just like so excited that people are interested in music therapy and interested in this this concept. Like I would love. Oh, thank you, Anne Marie. That is so sweet. Gonna listen to our back catalog. I would highly encourage everyone to check out Amanda's website. It's maestromusictherapy.com. And you can read more about music therapy on her website. You can read more about guided imagery in music, which is like really cool, where like they actually use music to like take you to an altered state where you like walk around in your brain, and it's really
Whoa. Are we in the future now?
Yes, right? We are currently now in the future. And Lowen and I are so like happy to have been here and been a part of this. And you can check out our podcast at intothewormhole. What is it? What is our website?
Dude, I just show up and I record with you.
You can find us on Instagram at intothewormhole.podcast.
Dude, I'm still not wearing pants. Do you think I know our website right now? Like,
oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, I got the time zones confused. This is where this all started.
I know. Laura, we're in Central Time. Amanda is in Eastern Time. We got time. For some reason, like the single hour is so much harder than that's hard. But yeah, I feel I'm happy. Do you want to say thank yous? I want to say thank you, Women at Warp. Thank you so much. I've been listening to Women at Warp for a long time, and y'all are amazing. Yay.
Thank you for having us. We hope listeners keep listening to as many of the podcasters and the podcasts you can during this weekend festival. We hope some of you will hop over and check out our past episodes. We do have one with Amanda. Larissa, I don't know if you mentioned that.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't.
They did a great one while I was on maternity leave about Dark Page from TNG.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about everything. So we invite you to kind of come over to our house and check it out.
Yeah.
And Amanda, thank you for coming back on with us. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
It's so wonderful to be with you guys.
Thank you so much. Well,
right.
we're excited for the rest of the festival. Thanks so much, Women at Warp. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. Yay.
Yeah.